Thank you, Dr. Bello. You have leveled the ground, and now it's time to sow the seeds of thought. And for that, I'm requesting our first distinguished speaker, Dr. Sami Ibrahim al Suwailem. He's Director General, Islamic Development Bank Institute and Chief Economist, Islamic Development Bank Group. Before joining this institute, Dr. Sami has worked in a number of institutions in various jurisdictions. He has authored several books and papers on Islamic economics and finance. He has done his PhD from Washington University, St. Louis, Missouri. Over to you for the next 30 minutes, Dr. Ibrahim.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. I'm greatly honored to be in Islamabad today, joining this August gathering of senior leaders of our Islamic financial industry, as well as in our member countries. I would like to start by thanking the State Bank of Pakistan for hosting this meeting for the IsDB Council, as well as hosting the other associated activities that Dr. Bello just alluded to. I would like also to thank my colleagues at the IsDB for their dedication, untired effort to lead the development of the regulatory systems of the Islamic financial industry. I think there have been so many talks and lectures on how Islamic finance is related to the sustainable development goals. I hope I will not be repeating many of these. So let me get into the main points that I would like to highlight today. Let me start with the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أحب العمل إلى الله أدومه وإن قل. The most preferred to Allah of good deeds are regular and consistent ones, no matter how small they are. This statement succinctly summarizes the Islamic approach to development. Steady and consistent progress rather than quick and abrupt growth. Haste makes waste, as the saying goes. Sustaining economic progress requires sustaining resources and therefore economizing on them. But we live in a finite world, and resources eventually are depletable. So how to economize on resources? We cannot economize by simply reducing the utilization of these resources. Instead, we should use them to build and innovate new and environmentally better resources that outlive the existing ones, and then use the new resources to build and explore yet additional and better ones to outlive them, and so on. In other words, sustainable development requires continuous efforts to build and discover resources for the future. Although no single resource can live forever, this strategy helps to consistently create sustainable resources. And what is the most important resource on earth? Human beings. Human capital is the most valuable asset in the economy. And the best way, therefore, to sustain resources is to invest in human beings. This is why health and education are the most valuable long-term investments. One important reason we face environmental crises is that we are taught in the university that the primary objective of economic behavior is consumption, or at least that's what I was taught when I was studying economics. If you pick an economics textbook, you will find that the objective of the economic man is to maximize the utility of consumption. This is very different from the objective of sustaining resources. Only under very narrow and stringent conditions that the two perspectives might converge and lead to the same outcome. In a rich and complex world like the one where we live, the two perspectives diverge much more often than they converge. It is essential, therefore, to integrate sustainable development into mainstream economics. Believe it or not, there are today mainstream textbooks and mainstream Nobel laureates, I would say, that would question the size or the extent of the climate change problem, and therefore they would undermine the threats it poses to our existence. So the battle is not over yet. If the youth learn this in school, our battle against climate change will be a losing one. To win the battle, we must win the new generation who in a few years will be leaders in their communities and therefore be able to make a lasting impact in their communities. Economic textbooks, therefore, should make sustainable progress the primary objective of the economic man rather than selfish short-term consumption. And this brings us to Islamic finance. Islamic finance integrates moral values, actually universal moral values, with economic activities. This integration is essential to achieve sustainable development and overcome the root causes behind the climate crisis the world is facing today. To see this, we should note that the climate crisis has two dimensions: time dimension and space dimension. The time dimension extends over generations. The narrow perspective of prioritizing the present over the future encourages us to forget about the future and enjoy the current moment. When each generation follows the same strategy, it is almost certain that humanity will not survive the climate crisis. This is where moral values come to play. If we care enough about future generations, then we must act now to save humanity. Saving humanity as a whole is a decent Islamic value. The Holy Quran says, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. And whoever saves a life is as though he had saved all mankind. The whole concept of sustainable development is based on the ability to see the future clearly enough to plan and sustain resources, not only for this generation, but for the coming generations as well. Moral values help to balance the present versus the future. The lack of this balance is a significant factor behind the environmental threats humanity is facing today. The space dimension of sustainability is reflected in the collective action it requires. Curbing the climate crisis is a form of a prisoner dilemma game where cooperation is necessary to achieve optimal outcomes. Unfortunately, there is always the incentive for the few to deviate from the group to win short-term gains at the expense of the group. But if everyone follows the same strategy, everyone loses. Moral values are necessary to balance self-interest versus group interest. Islamic finance not only emphasizes moral values, but also specifies my financing mechanisms appropriate for sustainable development. To sustain development, financing mechanisms must be sustainable as well. For example, the prohibition of riba, which is a major principle of Islamic finance, is key for sustainable finance and therefore sustainable development. The essence of Islamic finance is that finance must be integrated with the real economy. We cannot make money out of money. We must participate in trade and production to earn profits. Interest-based lending decouples financing from the real economy, leading to the self-multiplication of debt. As debt grows faster than wealth, the burden of debt services puts enormous pressure on economic resources to catch up with the unbounded growth of debt. But this is a losing game, because self-multiplied debt will necessarily outgrow the economy, no matter how hard people work or how fast they extract economic resources. This inevitably leads to crashes and depressions, resulting in yet another round of waste of resources. The prohibition of riba, therefore, is critical for sustaining economic resources. Another important mechanism for sustainable finance is Awqaf. Waqf is a long-term strategy for philanthropic and social finance. It is a clear example of how to make charity sustainable throughout the ages. When it comes to actualization of the Sustainable Development Goals, the Islamic Development Bank Group is leading several initiatives to make these goals a reality. In particular, my colleagues at the IsDB Institute are exploring innovative strategies to revive the vital role of the institution of Waqf to address some of the most pressing challenges facing our member countries. Currently, laws and regulations of Waqf vary significantly across countries, creating serious obstacles to capitalizing on Awqaf to play their role in sustainable development. On the other hand, there are abundant natural resources within our member countries that are waiting to be optimally utilized to support economic progress. A key initiative of our colleagues is proposing to combine the elements of Awqaf, free zones, and modern technology to create Awqaf free zones in IsDB member countries. An Awqaf free zone is an area where Awqaf assets can be created to enjoy protective status suitable to the nature and requirements for preserving Awqaf assets. The Awqaf free zones will be dedicated to establishing food farms and energy stations to address food and energy security, unlock the potential of underutilized natural resources, and alleviate poverty in member countries. The output or revenue of these zones will be distributed according to a pre-agreed plan as stated in the Waqf deeds, with special incentives given to host countries. Resources for building the Awqaf free zones will be mobilized through blockchain-based global Waqf tokens that allow the contributors, the Waqfin, to monitor and verify the transactions of the Waqf assets and revenue. Moreover, blockchain technology will be used to create, manage, and store the Awqaf deeds and contracts, which enables independent validation and transparency in the management of Awqaf within the free zone. The zones would be also equipped with Internet of Things for maximum transparency and verifiability of performance. We will be working closely with our member countries, development institutions, Islamic financial infrastructure institutions, together with other key players and stakeholders to make this initiative a reality, inshallah. With this, I conclude my lecture today. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.